Hello Titans, this is Mrs. Kolash again. Today we're going to be learning about character types in fiction. As examples during this lesson, I'll be using the characters in Harry Potter and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. If you haven't read either of these books or seen the movies, I would highly suggest you do so, as they are considered classics in my opinion. We're going to start with a couple terms before we get into the main character types. The first term we're going to talk about is a protagonist. A protagonist is the main character of the story. This is a character that engages in the primary conflict. They're often the hero of the story, and there can be more than one protagonist. So, for example, in Harry Potter is our main character. He is a protagonist. However, Ron and Hermione are just as important as Harry Potter. They are also considered protagonists of that novel. In The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, we have 4 characters that are very important and central to that story. So Lucy, Susan, Peter, and Edmund are all considered main characters. The opposite of a protagonist is an antagonist. The antagonist is the character or element in a story that stands against the protagonist. They're often considered the villain of the story and represent the opposition in the main conflict. So, for example, in Harry Potter, Lord Voldemort is definitely a villain. He is evil through and through and is in constant opposition to Harry Potter. Draco Malfoy, where we might not consider him to be evil or necessarily a villain, he would be considered an antagonist because he's in opposition to our main character of Harry Potter. In The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the White Witch is our antagonist. She is the main opposition. She definitely would be the villain through and through throughout the entire story. Conflict is very important in fictional stories. Conflict is a struggle between opposing forces. Conflict drives the action in a story. Without conflict, it's not much of a story. We have 2 types of conflict, internal and external. Internal is when a person kind of has those internal thoughts and feelings that they're struggling with, maybe between good and evil. External is when, again, we might have 2 characters that are opposed to each other, or maybe conflict with nature. So conflict is very important and helps us understand our characters. Now we're going to talk about the 4 main types of characters that you would find in fiction stories. The first one we have is a round character. A round character is a complex, fully developed character that possesses many diverse traits and feelings. In our examples for Harry Potter, we have Neville Longbottom and Severus Snape. Neville is a very developed character. We know all about him. We know about his parents. We know his favorite subject at Hogwarts. We know he lives with his grandmother. We know his fears. We know all about him. The same thing with Severus Snape. Snape, we know all sorts of details about him. We know how he feels about Harry Potter. We know how he feels about his parents. We know many, many traits and feelings about Severus Snape. In The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the character of Tumnus would be considered a round character. Again, he's fully developed. We know background details. We know feelings. We know his character traits. He's a very round character. The opposite of a round character would be a flat character. A flat character is a simple character that exhibits a one-dimensional personality. So, for example, we might have Lee Jordan or Seamus, who are kind of just background characters in Harry Potter. Yeah, they might have some dialogue and we might see them here and there, but they're pretty flat as they don't have many different character traits. They don't have a whole bunch of personality. The same thing with In Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe with the professor. He is a flat character because we know very little about him. He's in only a couple of scenes and he really doesn't show much about himself. So he is considered a flat character. Another way to think about this is kind of like those background players. So like in a movie, they might be like police officer number 2. And we don't really know anything about them. They're there just to help drive the story along. The next type of character we have is a dynamic character. This is a character that undergoes a significant change over the course of the story. Harry Potter is a prime example of a dynamic character. He starts at the beginning as, kind of a scared, lonely, sad child and really blossoms into a, confident, very happy kid with friends. And yeah, he's dealing with some stuff, but he really changes over the course of the story. Same thing with Neville Longbottom. He also goes through a significant change from the beginning to the end of the story. We also want to make sure that when you're thinking about dynamic characters and you're thinking about significant changes, these are internal character changes, meaning it's not like they change their hair color or they change their clothes. These are personality traits or character traits that are changing. So maybe from shy to brave. Our character in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe with Edmund, he's a very dynamic character. He starts off being kind of whiny and all kind of just mean, and he betrays his family, but he changes over the story and really proves himself to be a better person. The opposite of a dynamic character is a static character. A static character is a character that remains the same over the course of the story. They do not change, maybe a tiny bit, but really they don't change. So, for example, in Harry Potter, Luna Lovegood, she's just kind of the silly girl from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. She makes no big significant changes. And in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Mr. and Mrs. Beaver are also static characters. They have no development of their character. They stay the same over the entire story. One thing to think about is the character types combinations. A lot of times you might see round characters that are also dynamic characters. So again, we might think of Harry Potter. Very round, very complex, very detailed, and dynamic because he changes. Or you might have a round yet static character. I like to think of Draco Malfoy. Yes, we know a lot about him, but he really doesn't change at all. The other type would be flat and static. So again, a person that is one-dimensional, doesn't change. They're pretty much just the same person throughout the whole story. Very small role or very small part. Or you might have a flat and dynamic, but that's not often. All right, so now that we've gone through the lesson, for your practice, you are going to be reading the story $2 and then filling in the chart for each character. So you're going to decide if they're round or flat, dynamic, and static. Then you'll have a check for learning where you'll read another story about Persephone, and you will have a Newsella writing